The Godswood's pond held winter the way a hand cups a secret. A thin scab of ice had formed at dawn, and now it sang quietly as the morning lengthened. Not a song for the ear so much as for the bones. The tiny rattles and distant ping of seams growing, a conversation of cold with colder. In the bare branches above, the last of the ravens hunched like soot pressed into the white. Edric Stark stood at the edge and watched his breath make a low fog that the air stole at once. He cupped his bare fingers around a strip of birch bark, twisting and twisting it until the clean pale ribbon broke. He had come to the Godswood without guards, and he had left his furs thrown open. A northern man's way of testing what the day meant to say. Told him nothing new. He knew this winter. He had grown in it. His father had turned his face to it, and his father's father had left bone to it, a quiet that could be mistaken for mercy only by Southerners. On days like this, the heart tree looked smaller. With its red mouth and red eyes and the strange livid sheen of its sap trapped crust-like in the bark, it belonged oddly, no more and no less than a wolf belongs to snow. Edric had learned to stand before it and think without supplication. His prayer, the only one he understood, was to recite names. He recited them now, silently, each name a wood nail hammered into the long plank of their line. When the names were done, he found the silence had a weight to it, as if the old red eyes expected something more and he had none to give. The raven came after the bell in the yard called third hour. He heard the bell from the Godswood because of the clear cut of the cold, like glass struck with the pad of a finger. The bird found him on the path as he returned to the yard, a black Ken like all the others, whisking down to the splintered post by the gate with the unsteady authority of a man claiming a chair already warmed by someone else. It wore a band of white leather too clean for any brow beyond the wall. The wax on the cord was white as well, impressed with a sigil that made Edric's tongue press to his teeth behind his lip. Men used seals like this when the raven might be shot down in flight, and the message read by eyes that were owed no knowledge. He broke the wax with his thumbnail as he walked, passing through the gate into the stone lanes. Winterfell breathed. Its breath was smoke and sweat and the hard salt of leather, the iron stink of a smithy that had burned since before men kept ledgers. He did not look down as he walked. He knew every lip and seam of every flagstone. He knew where a man might turn his ankle in the turn by the armory if he had drunk too much the night prior. He read the letter while the kitchens turned their steam toward the sky and the yard filled with the thud and scrape of wooden blades. Lord Edric Stark, by the old pacts and the later ones, come. If you cannot, send your blood in your stead and your hand with it. If you will be cautious, come by night. If you will be bold, come by noon tomorrow. Bring no more than 3 you trust, and if you trust none, bring only yourself. You know the door. It has woken. He did not read the name because it had no need to be written, and because the pressed mark at the bottom did the thing names did, a history condensed, a knot tied in the cord of obligation. He folded the letter at once and wrote it into his palm with the closing fist, as if the act could hide it a moment longer from the eyes that made Winterfell function. The yard was full. Every eye saw and pretended not to. Edric lowered his furs and let the weight of them close around him before he crossed under the walkway that linked the tower to the great hall. Mara had already taken the long table near the fire, had sorted the morning's accounts into orderly stacks as if numbers themselves would be warmed by proximity to flame. She looked up when he entered, the sharpness of her face an effect of the light and not the bones beneath. When she concentrated, her eyes went soft, like a northern sky when the sun has never truly risen, and when she considered a person they sharpened again, and the person felt less than meat and more than metal. The people of the halls had called her mistress since their mother's death, and after their father fell, she had made the word feel natural. He did not show her the letter. He laid his gloves on the wood beside her elbow, and she reached without looking to pull them away from the honey pot she knew he would elbow given the chance. "Who calls you?" she asked, and because she knew the wax would be white, she did not trouble with whether any had called him. "The one we owe." She flicked her eyes at the door, then at the small window high above where the light had already hardened past noon. "You would go without eating," she said. He knew what she was doing and loved her for it. He sat, and a boy with hair too long to be a scullion's but too short for a squire's hurried a trencher to him. a wedge of bread and the thick stew that a Winterfell kitchen produced when it was preparing for the leaner days. Thick with the remnants of things. He ate and felt himself doing it, grateful that his body was still at the age where hunger came when called. "I'll take the Forester," he said when he had made a space in the bread. "And Garin, if he can be called from the eastern pens." "Garin is in the pens because it keeps him out of the armory," Mara said. "He believes a lance exists that will allow a bastard to be a knight without the courtesy of oaths." Her mouth did a small thing at one corner that other men took for disdain, and which Edric had learned to read as fond fatigue. "Take him. He is good with cold and quiet." "And you, take me?" she asked lightly, and then, because they learned each other once and more than once, her tone changed. "Take me," she said, and the words had less air in them now. "Do not go to the door without your blood." He nodded and pushed the trenchers away and stood. In the movement there was a memory, and he swallowed because he felt the shape of it before the picture came. He and Mara were younger in it, and the crypt was not yet their responsibility. Their father's hand had been heavy on his shoulder, not from love alone, but from an understanding of the difference between boy and heir. They had passed between the wolf kings, their stone faces greased by years of torches and men's breath. The air in the crypt was honest cold. It did not pet the skin. It seemed to pass through them and make one tally or another in some ledger that no living could hold. "Stand here," their father had told them, pointing not at the statues but at the seam in the back wall where the crypt's finishing changed from precision to something older, a bluntness like the last index of a tool. "If there is an hour that asks more than we have in coin or soldiers or grain, you will stand here and know which door is meant." Edric had asked then, foolish and young, if the door was a story. His father had made the face he only made when his words struck truth and found no purchase. The face had little room for kindness, but it was not cruel. It was as if the words had passed through him as wind passes through fur and is not caught at all. "When we say door," he had said, "we mean anything that answers only to us. And we mean the one you will never open if you can bear not to. You will think yourself brave for going there, and you will be wrong. You are brave for remaining ignorant." He did not tell Mara he remembered that. He only inclined his head toward the outer yard door, and she slid a script to sweep in the balances she would carry even to the wall because the wall did not care but the living did. The Forester, Rolf, waited by the kennels with the ease of a man drafted often and never in haste. Rolf had trees in his hair and trees in his hands. He had a patience with silence that Edric respected and avoided often because he did not always like what silence sifted up in him. Garin came with snow in his boots and a grin that made a person want to kick him or kiss him or both. He was Barnarel's son from the village under the west walls. A boy Mara had taught letters because otherwise he would teach other boys fists. "Where are we going?" Garin asked, and when Edric said only, "North," the grin went from heedless to honest. The bastard had a peculiar reverence for the north of north, as if the line of the wall were a hymn lyric he could never finish. He shouldered the bundle Mara through him, and the four of them moved into the flat light, past the tower that had been new in their grandfather's youth, through a gate that the men on it had quit saluting Edric through because he told them to and they believed him. They took the King's Road for the sake of ease and because the snow was not yet the greedy kind that swallowed men and sledges and horses as if it had held them in mouth since autumn. The forest drew in and out from the road like a breath, presenting birch and spruce like faces at a wake. When the wind turned they smelled the sea, the sour flat hush of brine under ice, and Garin told Rolf a story in which, once, the sea had come up the road like a horse and tried to nose into the saddlebags of men too proud to give it salt. "Who told you that?" Mara asked, and Garin, who knew better than to lie to her and loved lying more than Bred, only said, "An old woman in a smaller place than this, where even lieutenants of lies go when they retire." She shook her head so the fur on her hood made a little weather of its own, and Edric let the story lodge in him because it suited the day, and because he had the sense even now that he might want to remember how people spoke on this day when later days had altered his tongue. They reached the work of men by dusk. The wall lifted its unmoving river into dusk, as if the sky had not been quite finished and ice had come where cloud was meant to go. No matter how often one sees it, the wall cheapens the word sea. It requires new verbs each time. Edric and Mara had been taken to the wall twice as children, when their father still believed in miracles of instruction. Each time Edric's stomach had clenched not in fear, but in the way a man's gut clenches when he sees something that will outlast every opinion he could ever hold about it. Now, in the slate light, the ice had a color he had not seen before, a pallor that made his teeth hurt, a texture that looked like wind made stone. Castle Black presented no grandeur. It offered need. Its buildings were scrupulous and begrimed, and the men who moved between them did so in a pattern that said less about discipline than about hunger bent around discipline's skeleton. They saw him and did not, a talent learned in places where too many departures go unwitnessed. A boy took their horses without a word that rose above his scarf. A man older than Edric's father might have been if he had lived stood by the base of the lift with a posture that had chosen sparingness long ago and adhered to it ever after. "You read the letter," he said. His beard was white and his hair was not, and his eyes were pale in a way that did not sell fear cheap. He wore no sigil, because the wall did not allow personal history to be worn. He extended a hand. "Ryam," he said. "No title, because once you put a word on a thing at the wall, a storm takes it or a cold night rubs it smooth as a pebble." Edric took the hand and felt its bones. "I brought my sister," Edric said. "The forester Rolf. Garin Snow." Ryam's mouth did nothing to give away what he liked or did not. "Good," he said, and then they rode the rattling cage up the face of the wall, and the ice stared at them from an inch beyond the mesh while the wind sidled in and made the cage hum in a key that made men think of teeth. The top of the wall was a blue plane. It had a skin on it that never entirely Orgave boots. Men had cleared paths with their old straw brooms, and these showed like scars. Ryam walked and they walked. Edric breathed through his scarf and tasted wool and old smoke and the iron his own blood made when it thought of old thresholds. There were places where the ice made a sound like breath whistling in a broken nose, places where it made no sound at all, as if it were the skin of the world and the world slept. Ryam stopped at what appeared to be nothing. The top of the wall is a genius of nothingnesses. Only the old learn to see the precise version of nothing that means something. Ryam put his glove to the ice and held it there, just so, and it was not until Edric imitated him that the cold changed. It was not colder so much as attentive. In the moments after, the ice beneath their gloves thrummed, a substone sound that seemed to come from miles down. The sound did not ask them to go, told them they had already come. "Your father knew it," Ryam said, as his father knew it. He did not ask if Edric had been told. That was not his business, and not this ours. "When the sound is like this," he said, "you can wake it. When it is like this and you do not come, it wakes itself out of insult. When it wakes itself, it eats." He moved then in a way that made his age both sharper and less relevant. He stepped along the cleared path and then off it, to a blue patch where the ice lay clean and strangely unpitted, and he put his left palm down and his right palm against the left wrist, and Edric remembered at once where he had seen that set of hands. In a carving, in the crypt, a Wolf Lord statue had the right palm to the left wrist in a gesture that Edric had once attempted and then forgotten because it made the arm ache. He put his hand down on the ice, left palm, right wrist, and Mara did it too, without looking to him for permission because the day had already passed beyond permissions. Rolf stood a pace off and set his hands on the nothing also, and Garin, after a small hesitation that had more decency in it than fear, did the same. The ice beneath took their heat, and then it gave something back that was not heat and not quite knowledge. It gave a picture, something like a map and something like the taste of a story told without words. It felt like walking down in the dark and finding your boot joining a worn step you had never known you knew. The blue plane showed them an oval that was not seen but felt, then a seam in it. Then the seam became a hinge and the hinge turned and the oval admitted itself to be a door. "By white dawn," Ryam said softly, and Edric heard the little gratitude men who do hard work feel when the world appears to cooperate. The ice parted, a gentle parting, a melt without melt, and vanished a foot, then two, then more, until the oval lay like a shallow basin in blue stone. Within it the ice had the color of old milk and the clarity of air. There was a smell clean and thin, as if one had opened a chest in which an absence had been stored carefully for many winters. Riam did not look at them when he stepped down. He had no need to warn. Men would either fall or not. Edric stepped after him, and the wall rose around him like a lip. Mara's boots, then Rolf's, then Garen's, made careful thuds he felt through his shins. The basin was not a basin, of course. It was the top of a shaft. Riam's torch flared when he snapped flint near pitch, and the flame was odd, the color of tar in a storm, refusing blue as if blue had been overused above. They descended and the blue about them turned at last to something like green, then no color at all, then to darkness that was not negation but a fullness, as if the ice had been painted with night and the paint was fresh. The door was at the bottom. It always was. There are doors that make new bottoms where none existed before. Riam's torch found it reluctantly. It was a slab of substance that looked like ice and felt like neither ice nor stone. Across it the shapes men once called runes, but which were no more runes than snowflakes or letters had been incised. The light did not sit on them. The light thought better of it. Edric knew the shapes in the way he had known which seam in the crypt was older. He reached without asking permission and laid his palm against the upper left quadrant of the slab, and the slab was colder than the ice and warmer than blood and completely indifferent to both. "Breathe," Mara said. She did not say it to him alone. She said it to all of them, and to the thing beyond the door. Breathe, and do not mistake that for permission to say anything. The door woke by listening to their lungs. When you stand before a thing that knows your belonging as a rhythm before it knows it as a face, you do not attempt to explain your dignity to it. The slab softened and receded, and then, because doors like this are old and enjoy their own theater, it formed itself into an arch over their heads as they passed. Inside, their torches seemed indecent. The light bounced off a surface that did not want to be seen and also wanted to be adored. Edric thought of water under ice and then thought of the skin of a man's arm where it is too thin over the veins. He did not speak because there was already speaking here. It was low and it was wide and it was not voice. It was the sound of the world finding its own temperature. They had entered a chamber like a lung. Its curves were not built. They had grown. In its center lay a slope like a beach, shallow and ridged, leading to a pool that was not water and was not water. Suspended beyond the pool, in the reach of the chamber where you could almost say ceiling if a ceiling had been one thing rather than many, there hung a collection of objects the size of a man's torso and the shape of eggs, if eggs had been imagined by someone who had never seen anything born from anything soft. Garen made a sound then that would have been a curse if he had not been still too young to carry curses the way men can. It was not fear. It was the sound of his life stretching to accommodate a new width. The eggs were ice, or at least they used ice to make themselves understood. Their skin was not smooth but textured with fine facets that made them look, at certain angles, like the snow a wind carves. Within each the torchlight found not movement but the memory of movement, slow swirls, pale not because pale is close to white but because pale is what happens when a color refuses to be named at all. 8, Riam said, and counted with the torch head. There were 9 in my father's day. Edric stepped closer. On the slope beyond the pool lay a device that made Rolf put his hand by instinct to his knife hilt. It was a frame of dark substance like black glass and old nail, with a scaffold raised above it from which hung vessels shaped like the old gourds men used in summers to carry small sweet beer. One of the vessels was full. The thing that filled it had a color no berry ever had. Something between blue and no color at all, with a glow under it like something embarrassed. A tube ran from the vessel to the eggs above, and at intervals along the tube men had fixed charms that were not of iron and not of bone and not of anything Edric had ever broken with his hands. Riam's torch found the source of the vessel's fullness. In the far curve of the chamber, nearly a part of the wall, something stood that made the air arrange itself about it. It was tall without arrogance and thin where it should have been unable to stand. It wore no cloak because the cold was a language in which it was native and the cloak would have been a translation. It had a face in the way a glacier has a face, planes and the suggestion of where eyes would be if a man had imagined this with a man's hand. Where its wrist met the support men had made for it, the blue fluid slid delicately along the channels into the waiting gourd. Rolf took his hand off his knife because the knife would have made a joke of itself. Garen took a step forward and then another back, a dance more honest than prayer. Mara did not move. She set her torch in a cleft in the ice where torches had waited before and looked at the thing the way a steward looks at a winter's tally, without flinching and without praise. "How many winters?" she asked, not of Ryam. The thing perhaps had no ears. It had membranes where wind's thoughts might pass. It had fingers, if you call something which ends in meticulous points fit to sign a covenant. It neither turned nor did not turn when she spoke. The chamber itself answered, soft as breath against sleeping fur. "Since before we kept exact numbers," Ryam said, "we do not take more than it offers. We do not ask when it decides to give. We chose long ago not to learn the way to force." "And when there were 9, Edric said. His voice sounded as if it needed a shave. "What happened to the 9th? Ryam lifted his torch toward a lip of the chamber that Edric would not have named a lip until the light made sense of the edge. Beyond the lip was a chute, and beyond that, air. The shaft emptied onto the cliff face of the world, somewhere west of the place where rangers told their last jokes. "We let one go when the walls softened enough to ask," he said. "It woke the ice from the other side. They do not fly the way warm dragons fly. They move along what cold makes." Garen, reckless of being understood, stepped to the pool and crouched and held his palm above the not water. "The blood," he said, in a voice reverent in the way a thief speaks to a lock. He pointed with his chin at the thin tubes that fed the eggs. "Is that what this is?" Ryam brought the torch to the frame. Now the light sat on things that conceded to it. Iron, yes. Dragonglass, yes. Wood that had never met heat, yes. In the gourd, the color had no analogy he trusted. "Blood," he said, "or what blood is to them. It is not red. It is not warm. It is not shy. It does not carry stories the way ours do. It is a story, and we can never be sure we've heard the part that concerns us. The old pacts say we may ask for it while one of our blood stands here. It does not say why our blood matters. It only says that our blood standing here matters." There was another smell then, a rind in the air like metal coins brought from a tight fist. Edric realized his nose had begun to bleed. When he looked at Mara, he saw, with the accuracy siblings share, that her nostrils were clean and that her cheek had the faintest sheen, which meant her eyes were watering but refused to release. Rolf had knotted his scarf around his mouth without noticing. Garen wiped his upper lip on his glove and was surprised to see pale pink. He looked at Edric for verdict with the frankness that had made Edric bring him. "Do you believe we do this for war?" Ryam asked into the chamber, the question floating like frost. "We do not. We do it because the wall is not a wall in the way men build walls. It is an instrument. Its notes sour sometimes. The eggs wake then, and they're cold, this special, ordered cold. Plays the note back to the stone and the ice, and they remember how to hold again. The old words," he said, and Edric heard the carefulness in his voice that meant he did not speak old words lightly. "The old words call them the quiet flight because they do not take to air, and because men who come to watch the work of it find they cannot tell it later if they saw anything at all. We tend them because tending is our arrogance and our duty both. The others," he did not glance toward the captive, "we ask only this, he nodded at the gourd, "and never more." "And why does it stand?" Mara asked. "And give?" Ryam did not know. His face did the thing faces do when they confess ignorance in front of children. He gestured toward a place where a very old knife mark had been made in the ice with very patient steel. "Because there is a pact. The pact may have been greed in its hour. It functions as mercy now. I say may because my elders would not say the word greed aloud in this chamber. Perhaps once we struck at them and failed, and learned that what our steel could not take our winter might ask. Or perhaps," he said, and Edric felt an affection for him then that had little to do with walls and much to do with nakedness of mind. "Perhaps there is a creature behind that shape and a creature inside it, and we appease the first and comfort the second. Perhaps they want, in a way we translate badly, to sleep. And we tend sleep." They stood with their torches and their blood and the old thing's attention, if it attended, and the eggs made their small non-movements. Edric stepped along the curve, counting. 8. The ninth absence kept the air taut in a way that would have been wasteful if men had not been present to feel it. He stopped at one egg nearer the wall, where the tube's charm had frosted a little more than its neighbor. Within, the knot light moved like the thought of a fish. He put his gloved hand out, then thought of his father's palm against his wrist, and he removed his glove and set his skin to the skin of the egg. He thought of mountain springs and of the breath of his mother when she had lain against his chest once when fever took her and made her too light. He thought of the sheen on a horse's coat under moon. He thought of winter not as enemy but as a grammar his family spoke correctly and others did not. He thought of the crypt seam and the sense of hinge. He thought, though he had not meant to, of his father's eyes at the end and the word that had not come because it had not been needed. He thought of Mara's hands on the ledger, and of the bleeds the books made, tiny black lines like a blood pressed from ink. He thought of Garen's grin and Rolf's patience. He thought of the wall and Ryam and the men whose names had not lived in his house and whose lives had made this possible. He thought of the other, if you must call it that, and of the way its shape bore the weight of the chamber around it without moving. A sound entered his hand. It was the same sound the pond made, and the same sound the ice made under boots, and the same sound the world makes when it agrees with itself. It did not mind him. It knew him as a set of measures. It would remember him this long and no longer. It would remember Mara differently. It would remember Garen with a tenderness he could sense, a tenderness reserved for boys who would do something wrong later but not now. "What do you want?" he asked, and felt stupid in the asking. Men ask like this because we cannot stop ourselves. He expected no answer. He received none. But he felt something like a picture arising in which he did not appear at all. A long white place and a line along it, and above the line a moving darkness, and from below the line a stroke of cold rising to strike the darkness until the dark made its old curving back into the other direction and went down into sea. "Tomorrow," Ryam said, "we would not have called you for appetite. It is not hungry in the way a child is hungry, and not in the way your hounds are. It stirs now because the wall has softened in a place where it is not soft without harm. If you are here with your blood at dawn, the egg will open enough to sing. We will listen. We will learn which note the wall has forgotten to hold. We will urge it to remember. And if I am not," Edric said, though he was, and Ryam knew it, and Mara's breath was audible for having been held and let go. "Then it will do it anyway," Ryam said. "And in doing so, it will make a choice about how much it needs us. And if it finds it does not need us." He stopped because his honesty required him to keep that sentence quiet. "Come at dawn," he said instead. And in saying dawn, he meant the particular dawn the wall has. Not the one the farm has. Not the one the city has. Not the one a man or woman alone has when they first open eyes. They slept in cells that were not cells, alcoves scraped from the thoughts of the wall, and they dreamed not in colors but in temperatures. Edric woke once to find his tongue had frozen to the back of his teeth in a film so thin it might have been shame, and he peeled it free and said Mara's name to reassure himself that the word still meant what it once had. She said his without waking. They went down again before the men cooked porridge. Ryam met them with his hair in a tail and his beard scraped of rime. He had not slept. Men like him don't. The ice had a tone that made Edric think of a harp string when a finger lightly moves near it but does not touch. The door admitted them with less ceremony. Inside the chamber, the captive's vessels had lowered in level. The tube into the egg he had touched the day prior had darkened in its length. Ryam lifted a hand and they sank onto their heels and made silence for room. What happened then did not happen the way breaking happens, because there was no fracture to admire. The egg developed a seam as frost develops a line down a window, and the seam made a small music like grain shaken slow from a jar. It was not dramatic. It was unavoidable. The seam developed depth and then shape and then became a mouth and then, because everything must be born into some sort of air, it opened. What came first was not a head or a light. It was a breath. A cold the shape of a thought moved into the room and made a line in Edric's lungs and then balanced it with another line. The thing that emerged was smaller than legends and larger than sense. Edric's hand, still remembering the egg's skin, reached without moving because there are reaches you undertake without putting your body into them. The dragon, if the word could bear the task, took no color from fire and no shape from lizard. It had facets as its egg had had facets, and a flow over these that suggested muscle but showed nothing like meat. Its eyes re not eyes. They were the idea of sight. It moved along the air as men move along hard crust that holds weight. It turned toward the captive without malice and toward Ryam without reverence and toward the wall with recognition. It opened its mouth, if that is the right term, and sang. The note was not high or low. It was right, and it made the ice above them flex, and the flexure moved along corridors whose maps only very old crows knew, and somewhere beyond the lift and beyond the kitchens and the yards and the black and the groaning gates, a soft crumble happened as if a snore had been drawn in the ice and corrected by a careful hand. The wall remembered something. Edric felt the memory pass through him and find no use for him, and he loved being not needed and hated it at once. The dragon closed itself. It did not return to its shell. It did not leap the lip. It set itself on the slope and laid its flanks along the not water, and the water steamed in a fashion like thought, neither rising nor falling, only attending. The captive's blue dropped a fraction more. Mara's mouth tightened in the way that meant she had found a new column to add to a tally she'd thought balanced. Edric made the misstep of looking at the captive as he would look at a man from whom he had taken coin. He saw then what men are not meant to see if they intend to remain uncomplicated. In the exact angle of what you might call its cheek lay a posture that resembled willingness so closely that he could not pull it apart. It did not struggle because struggling had never been tried or had been tried long ago and found to make things worse. It did not ask. It did not forgive. It existed in a position that eliminated certain words and made remaining words too heavy for voices. "Do we owe it?" he asked Mara quietly, and she did not answer because her honor answered and would require a new ledger to record what it said. Garen, who had the gift of being wrong in original ways, whispered, "It is beautiful," and Rolf, who was not often provoked to language, said, "So are saws." And the two of them stood with their separate truths and did not argue because the chamber would only accept submission or silence. The dragon's second note began before the first had finished. The wall adjusted again. Edric felt the men at the top shift their boots. Somewhere, a stone that had spent decades doing the wrong work was relieved of duty. The captive's fluid ran thinner, then thicker, then regained its former pace. Ryam's face expressed a thing without assigning blame. The knowledge that they walked the edge between tending and theft with a grace too small to rely on season after season. The note altered, pitched a hair, and then the chamber changed. It was a change like the mood of a room when a joke arrives ill-timed. The dragon halted its song not abruptly but with the precision of a blade brought to a stop on a whetstone. Its head turned to the shaft leading to the world and back to the egg from which it had come, and then, like a man whose thought finally catches the thought it has been chasing, it raised its body from the slope and moved not toward the captive or toward the lip but toward a place in the wall where the ice bore the memory of an old opening. Ryam stepped without fear to place himself between the creature and that place. He did it as a man might step between a horse and a cliff, not to stop the horse forever but to remind it of edges. The dragon did not mind him. It moved its sight on him and then through him and then did something Edric could not see. The chamber cooled one hair further. Ryam's breath made a feather of itself and fell. "Do not touch it," Mara said, and no one had intended to, but the warn needed air to be true. "Do not name it anything. Do not own it with a word." The place in the wall that had looked like a memory became a fact. The ice thinned in a neat oval and then fell inward without breaking. A smell came from beyond, not sea and not air, a mineral odor like the breath of a deep earth cut. Ryam lifted his torch to see, and the torch coughed and went out as if water had closed its mouth. The dragon slid into the aperture and a hum went with it that made Edric remember his father's hand. Ryam turned to them with no alarm, only that same confession of ignorance that had earned Edric's love earlier. "It will move along the old ways," he said. "The brood finds its own work. We can believe what we like about guiding, but when the note calls them, they go." "And the wall?" Edric began, and then the hum returned stronger, from behind them, from above, from inside the ice, and men in distant sleeping hollows said the names of their mothers without waking. The chamber held the four of them, and the old man, and the old thing, and the 8 less 1 eggs, and a door that had become a new door. The tide of cold moved through and away like a scout. When the quiet came, it was thick. The captive had not moved, but the tube had sweated frost. Ryam relit his torch, and the flame came sheepishly back. Edric looked at his sister to find not fear but new arithmetic. "We will need to decide," she said, and he could see the branches of the decisions making themselves known, each twig a cut to be accepted or deferred. What remains ours and what never was. What we call mercy when we ask for this. Her eyes moved to the vessel and the steady pale flow and did not flinch. "We'll stay," Edric said, and it was not an answer. It was a sentence a man says to inhabit the next hour. The wall would allow them their small braveries. The larger things would do what larger things do, learn their own names. Refuse them. He touched the egg that had opened and felt in it a gratitude that was not soft. On his tongue was a taste like iron filings. He had bled, and the wall had bled, and something else had bled beyond the words they kept for it. From the shaft above came the thick fall of boots, the shouted Kurdex. Change of men who had learned to shout without wasting warmth. Ryam looked up with the air of a host remembering guests in another room. "They felt it," he said. "There's a sag along the eastward rim. The song will mend it." Edric drew a breath and felt the shape of it against his ribs. He did not want to leave this chamber. He did not want to stay. He reached for the rope that would carry the gourd up enough to give the captive ease, and in doing so he thought of pacts written on ice and on skin and on pages. He heard in the not hearing of the chamber a phrase that was not spoken but arrived. That tending is the only noble theft. He looked at Mara because he could not help it, and in her face he saw the notion formed completely before he had language for it. Tomorrow and the day after that, and the daylight when they would stand before the heart tree and say their fathers' names and the names of those before, and add one more name to the list of doors they could open and chose not to or chose to. The dragon would move within its element. The wall would remember what held it. Men would bleed. Something old and beautiful and uncomforting would grant of itself. Freely, and beneath a grammar they had never mastered. "Come," Ryam said, because he knew men at the top needed hands now, and because the chamber, for all its age, disapproved of loiterers. They turned away and the door accepted them again, and as they rose in the shaft the torch smoke drew a ribbon on the blue, and the ribbon knew their names and, being old smoke, did not care in quite the way they might have hoped. The air above bit at their cheeks with renewed sharpness. The cold was clean again, not the busy kind that works on old magic. When they stepped back onto the wall, the sky was the color of tin. Men were already gathered along the lip, their breath laid out as banners that barely stirred. A dark band at the far end of sight showed where the ice had sagged and then been made obedient again. Edric stood and let his eyes run along the line until they accepted the honest length of it. He lifted the white-lettered missive from his pocket and tucked it into his glove and then, with no audience but Mara, let it go to the wind. The wind took it and made no drama. It carried the wordless thing down the blue, and across the face the world shows to no cities and no kings. Behind them, under them, everything they had seen continued to be true. Ahead of them, things they had not yet learned waited with the patience of rock. Garen stood on his toes to see farther than his age allowed, and Rolf simply put his palm to the ice as if greeting a familiar beast. Ryam did not smile, because that would have been an error measurable in lost heat. But his eyes had a tiny concession to the luck that meets labor as a friend now and then. Edric watched the horizon and felt, quietly and without shame, that he had stepped past a seam in a wall he had not known was a wall until his feet stood on the other side. They descended again after aiding the men who did the daily work. They ate a food that was only food. They spoke as people speak when they would have liked to say something else and did not yet know how. The dragon's new note reached them here and there, in spoons, in the creak of leather, in the sleep that took Rolf sitting upright. When the next dawn came, it did not come soft. It came abrupt, as if someone had cut away all darkness in one straight slice. Edric woke with a word dried on his tongue. He could not recall it, and he did not try. He rose, and Mara rose, and Garen was already awake with his grin replaced by a narrow attention that would, perhaps, make him a man if luck allowed it. They went to the shaft, and the wall presented them to its deep once more without ceremony. In the chamber, the captives' vessels lay at the same level as before, either because Ryam had raised them in the night beyond courtesy or because the old thing had regulated its own giving. The eggs watched without eyes. The song told them plainly that the world asked to be held again in a place where Edric had never walked. He looked then, longer than courtesy allows, into the captive's cool face. The thought occurred, not generous and not cruel, only true, that if there was story left to hear about why it stood, it would not be told to him in any language he could be certain to understand. He bowed because pride requires bows sometimes, not as a condescension but as a way to keep the head from cracking when you walk from one room of the world into another. The dragons sang toward noon, and the ice answered, and all their names continued to mean less and more with each note. When the song paused, Garen turned to Edric with a look men carry into vows and into crimes and into marriages and into ships. Edric did not embrace him. He touched his wrist, left palm to right, the old gesture their father had taught them in the crypt, and felt in that small bridge the weight of doors he could open and doors that would open despite him. He thought, as the note lengthened and the cold set one more nail in place, that the wall and the brood and the captured ancient and the pact were all larger than the Starks had ever deserved and exactly what had been laid over their shoulders when the first boy with a wolf's head on his banner learned to count winters. He breathed because Mara had told him to, and because in this place breath made the only sentence a man could hope to finish without making a fool of himself. And in the instant before the note changed again, he felt another small stirring, private, inconvenient, fierce, in which he knew as surely as he knew the seams of the flagstones under Winterfell that something old was coming, not patient as rock now but quick, and that the ledger Mara kept would need new columns and new inks and a new courage even to look at it. He did not name it. He allowed the cold to name him instead. He stood under ice and above earth and between packs and listened. The dragons sang and the wall remembered, and the world, for a time measured best by breath, held.